forget to hit record. Hello, everybody. I'm hitting record before I forget hitting record like I did last time, and I talked for 10 minutes before I hit play. Well, funny, right? Yeah. I'm just reading some comments. I'm in the Facebook group right now, and I'm just reading some comments from everybody, and I'm seeing this reoccurring theme from about 90% of you about cravings. Oh, wait, I was going to wait for a minute. It's only 5:02. I'd like to wait for a few minutes after. Hi, Amber.
Hello. I wasn't sure if my mute was on or off. I was kicking the kids out. The kid.
No, you're fine. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes here to see if anybody else is joining us before I get started. I just hit record though, so I don't forget like I did last time. I have done one of these to the end and I forgot to hit record. So that sucked because I had to go back on Facebook Live like the next day and like read. I don't think you were in that reset, Carlene. I think that was one of the one that you weren't, and it sucked because I had to go back in Facebook Live because obviously a lot of people can't attend live, which is fine. That's why it's recorded. But I had to go back into Facebook and do a Facebook Live the next day with the entire thing again. I was like, oh. So
I mean, that's what you miss out on, all the good stuff if you're not live.
I know, and I've gone back and forth, and it for people here and then people who are going to watch the replay, if you've done this before, I have gone back and forth before by doing Zoom sometimes and then doing Facebook Lives at like different times. Like I'll jump on at like 11 o'clock on a Friday and do this instead of doing an evening. But it doesn't really seem to matter like what time I do these. Like there's always a big chunk of people that can either attend or can't attend, and some people just prefer to catch. So I just kind of go back and forth, but we'll see. Give it one more minute here. This lighting is making me look very flushed out though, or maybe I am just this white. This girl needs a tan. Oh, there we go. I got the tan. That better. Yeah, Carlene, you provoked that post today. I just want to let you know by sending me mom.
As I was crying, I'm like, oh my God, Brandy will just die over this one.
So you guys can go look at my recent social media post that has nothing to do with diet and health and fitness and fat loss. And sometimes I like it that way because I get bored sometimes talking. No, I don't get bored. I love this stuff, but sometimes it just gets redundant or overwhelming. I have so much information in my head sometimes that I just need to give myself a break from talking about like nutrition and stuff like that. So I wrote a post about motherhood, but I was in the gym this morning talking to Carlene over Instagram because clearly I don't work out that hard. And she had sent me this video of which I shared in my stories. And the video was basically talking about the connection that children have with their moms and the video showed like a bunch of moms lined up, and then they would bring in a kid. This kid was like 4, 5, 3 years old, and they would blindfold the kid, and the kid would have to go through the moms, and they're like touching the hands and touching the faces. And all the times the kid can pick the mom out just by that, and just kind of goes to show that like innate primal connection mothers have with their children. So she sent it to me while I was at the gym, and I was like, I'm gonna watch this right now because like I'm trying to lift and I really don't want to start crying in the gym. And like since postpartum, I cry. I was never like this. I just cry all the time. I see like sad kitty videos and I'm like, like it's ridiculous. The dog, if you guys have heard me talk about, there's a dog up the street, there's a puppy up the street that these older folks have. They're very, very old, very, very old school. And they kind of have this mentality of like, dogs aren't inside dogs. Like dogs are like outside. They're not really pets. He was a breeder. He was like a hound dog breeder. I don't know why I'm telling you guys this, but I'm telling you guys this. And they have a very old hound dog. This dog's got to be like 27 years old. I have no idea how it's like still alive. I've only seen it like once, and it's a hoarding house. So there's just like a lot of stuff. They're like 80 plus, just don't move around, kind of disabled. And they've got a new puppy. I don't know why they got a puppy.
Why?
I don't know. And for the last 2 weeks, all you hear when you walk outside my house is this dog crying because they leave it. I think they leave it outside. Um, and I mean, it's constant and it's loud, and like they are a block down from me, and that's how well I can hear this puppy. But like this just goes to like my postpartum sensitivity. I can't walk by the house anymore because I'll start crying, and it's just like, so anyways, that was my post today for Carlene making me cry by sending me stupid reels.
And then you said, "Oh, I can't watch it now. I'm at the gym." And then what did I tell you?
Wait, what did you tell me?
I said, "Get off your phone
Oh
at
yeah,
the
then she was
gym."
yelling at me for being on my phone at the gym. I was
At least you
resting.
weren't on the in the sauna like everyone else in the sauna on their phone. I hate it.
That that is true. That is true. Hi guys. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, now it's 7 minutes after. I guess I'll actually start the spiel here. Okay, I have a lot to talk about. So my goal is right to keep this about an hour. What I really want to try to get to is there's a reoccurring theme. This is what I started talking about, and I somehow got sidetracked into puppies and crying and babies and motherhood. I don't know how that happened. There's a reoccurring theme of people struggling with some cravings, right? Many of you guys have said that, and I don't think that's weird. I actually think that's probably pretty accurate for where everybody's at right now at the beginning of the reset. So I am hoping I will have a little time at the end of this to talk about cravings. If I don't, I will just jump on a Facebook Live in the next few days and I'll talk about it just so this doesn't get terribly long, because Tim is also cooking some chicken drums downstairs and I can smell it. And I am quite hungry. I broke fast like a king this morning. I hope we all got the memo on that. And it was delicious and it has kept me satiated. It's 5 o'clock and I don't know what time I ate. I don't really even remember. Maybe around 9. And it's kept me rolling. But now I'm just starting to feel like a little rumble in my stomach, and my body's politely asking me for a little bit of nourishment, and I'm smelling it, so it's making that sensation even more profound. But so week two, here we go. We got 1 week under our belt. We're still all alive, so that's a really good sign. I want to talk about the language here really quick, okay? The language we use around food. I want all of us to start paying attention to detaching any morality, any moral value from our food choices, right? This like good food, bad food talk, this naughty food, right? I shouldn't have eaten that. That was like a naughty food. Or even better, when you go to like the grocery store and you see food labels packaged as guilt-free. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, there's no guilt in that food, right? That's just like a marketing scheme to make us feel bad about ourselves and all of that stuff. So I want us to try to detach morality from our food, and I want us to detach from any labels, right? We're not doing labels. We're not doing keto, we're not doing low carb, we're not doing vegan, we're not doing flexible dieting, whatever all the other labels are, we're not doing that. All we're doing is we're just over here eating human food, doing human things, right? We're not doing anything. Nothing I have asked you guys so far is anything radical, right? We're just eating biologically appropriate food at this point. We're not even dieting, right? We're just simply eating foods that a human is biologically. I feel like the word diet has just been bastardized, right? Like, to me, a diet is just a species appropriate food, right? Like every animal has a diet. A dog has a species appropriate diet, right? Dogs are carnivore-ish, omnivore-ish, mostly carnivore. Cat's biological diet is a carnivore, etc. So it's like, I don't really label this dieting. I just think we're kind of like eating with our biochemistry here. But so our value, this is important. Our value is not remotely tied to what we choose to eat. Nothing I eat, nothing you guys eat makes you a good person or a bad person or any of that. And I think when we use this language around food, it perpetuates a poor relationship with food and a poor relationship with our body. I actually had a client not too long ago. I have a couple individual clients right now that I'm working with. And I have them write a weekly check-in. So every time I meet with them, I do weekly check-ins similar to like this, but it's one-on-one. It's more personalized and individualized and whatnot. And I have them write a couple things on a weekly check-in form. And she was talking about, there's a question, do you feel like this week was a success? Yes or no? And she put no. And below that, all she had, she rattled off a bunch of things that actually really, really went well for the week. And at the end of it was, there was a work party or something like that, a work meeting, and somebody had brought in donuts. So she ate a donut. And she declared on her workout, on her weekly check-in sheet that the entire week was ruined because she ate a donut during a work meeting. I was like, really? Like, all because that donut? Like everything was just done at that point in time. So it's like we give a lot of power and a lot of morality to food, and I don't think it's serving us anymore. So it does take some practice, right? This is probably something that has been programmed into us for decades at this point, depending on where we are in our age spectrum here. Like, think of this, like, if you were younger, like if Susie's a good girl, she can have a sucker, right? You only get dessert if you finish all the food on your plate. Oh, you had a good day at school, you won a baseball game, let's go get ice cream, those kind of things. I don't want to go too far down like the food psychology train here, but I think it's something to at least noodle on about where did you learn your food habits from? Where did you learn your relationship with food from? Food behaviors are typically learned in childhood. We kind of know that childhood, and then our culture further forms our thoughts and our beliefs around food and our bodies and things like that. Did you have to clean your plate when you're a kid? I don't think I lived in that existence, but I know a lot of people who are a little bit older than me, they did have that rule. Like, you had to clear your plate before you left the table. And if you didn't, you had to sit your ass at the table until you cleared your plate. Were you rewarded or punished with food, right? That's a common thing. Did you hear the term good food and bad food growing up? Did your family members talk about diet and talk about their bodies? Did your parents or grandparents talk about your bodies? I hear that a lot, like grandparents commenting on grandkids' bodies, your parents commenting on your bodies, like, ooh, you're looking a little whatever today, or like, oh, look at those cute little love hands, things like that. And it's just, those things seemingly innocent at that point in time, but it helps form this narrative. Okay, following? So not only is the language that you use around food super important, but the way you talk to yourself and the way you talk about yourself is equally as important. And you're probably like, Brittany, what the hell does this have to do? It has everything to do with this, actually, with breaking fast like a king or unsupportive, supportive food. It has to do a lot. So I want you guys to acknowledge what are some of the self-limiting beliefs you have about yourself. Okay, I have tons of them. You can pop it in the chat if you really want. Like, what are these self-limiting beliefs that we have about yourself? Ask yourself, is it true? Okay, the narrative you say about yourself, I'm lazy, I'll always be fat, I'm addicted to sugar, right? That's a common one I hear. I can't wear that outfit until I lose X amount of weight. I always self-sabotage. I am on phone calls with clients all week long, and that is a reoccurring statement. Well, I always self-sabotage. I'm just a self-sabotager. I will always fail, okay? So these are self-limiting beliefs, right? These statements, these declarations that we make about ourselves. Let's use, I always self-sabotage, for example, since that's a common one. Is that really true? Okay, is that really true about yourself? Do you always self-sabotage? Of everything in life, do you always self-sabotage? You might have before, right? We might have at one point in our lifetime, but is that always? No, right? No, it's just not true. It's just not true. These beliefs and these narratives that we believe about ourselves. I want people to try to find the untruth. I don't know if that's a word, untruth, but we're going to make it a word. I want people to find the untruth in the truth that you believe about yourself. Okay, poke a hole in its accuracy. Because I bet when I talk to clients and they're saying, well, I always self-sabotage, I'm like, oh, okay, like, Then we talk about their family and their jobs, and like, do you self-sabotage there? Do you, I don't know, I can't even think of an example right now, but and 100% of the time they're like, well, no, like I don't do those kind of self-sabotaging behaviors there and there and there. I'm like, oh, okay, so you're not a self-sabotager, right? You don't do that all of the time. I just think it's important to kind of try to poke some holes in those narratives that we believe about ourselves, and ask yourself, wherever you seek truth, okay, we're getting a little philosophical here, so hang with me here. Wherever you seek truth, this is going to sound weird, right? Do you seek truth from science? Do you seek truth from the universe? Do you seek truth from the Bible, if that's your thing? Do you seek truth from your family? Wherever you seek truth, would that truth agree that you are always a self-sabotager? Okay. Oh, look, like Jenny. I always use Jenny. I don't know who Jenny is. She's just a proxy name that I come up with. And I haven't had a Jenny in here yet, so I guess that works well. Would where you seek truth from believe that Jenny is always a self-sabotager, right? Like, oh, look at Jenny again. There she is, always self-sabotaging. Everyone agrees that Jenny's just a self-sabotager. No, right? No, it's just simply not true. And these are narratives that we have created, that you have created and started to believe yourself. The narrative exists nowhere else besides in our heads, right? Besides in our heads and in our beliefs about ourselves, these self-limiting beliefs. Where do these stories come from, right? And then how do we react when we believe these stories about ourselves? We behave as that person. This is where it's tying back around here, okay, to why this is so important. When we believe these things about ourselves, we behave like that person, okay? And then this is like psychology 101. This is kind of my field. I'm in the mental health field. Psychology 101, thoughts follow behaviors, right? We've all kind of heard that before. So if you believe you are that person, if you believe you're a sugar addict, if you believe you're always going to be fat, if you believe you're a self-sabotager, insert whatever self-limiting belief you have about yourself, and you tell yourself that enough, you're going to act accordingly, right? And then every opportunity that the world, now we're kind of going into some weird manifestation stuff here. Now, every opportunity that presents itself in the world is going to reflect those self-limiting beliefs. Does that make sense to you guys? A little bit? Carlene, I'm on a roll with some new stuff in the reset lately. I don't usually talk about some of this stuff, but I think it's important because I think it has to do a lot with our food behaviors. And you all are probably here because there's some food behaviors that you're doing that are no longer supporting you. And I think it's important to understand where they come from, right? Without doing like a deep dive, but just like, so you can kind of, fight that narrative a little bit. So it's like you're putting that energy out into the universe type thing. So then what happens when you walk around believing that you're always a self-sabotager? Poor Jenny here, who eats an Oreo or something like that that's off plan, or Jenny tries another restrictive diet and can't follow it. And then that story that she's created about herself, about being a self-sabotager, barks at her, right? It barks at you and it reminds you like, oh, yep, see, you're always this person. You're always going to be this person. It doesn't even matter. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is, I want us to stop doing that. Okay, guys, I want us to stop doing that. If being hard on ourselves worked, it would have worked by now. So that's my little spiel about why the language that we use about ourselves, to ourselves, about our food, about our bodies is actually that important, because it does reflect on some food choices that we end up making. So unsupportive, supportive language, that's the new unsupportive, supportive foods. That's the new language I want you guys to lean into. Not good, not bad, not anything else that we have come up with. Guilty, naughty food, blah, 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 blah. It's either supportive or it's unsupportive, okay? So, gotta wet my whistle. You might be a little perplexed on why I asked you to tap the brakes on grains, right? That's kind of a weird one. The beloved base of the good old food pyramid. I don't know how anybody's possibly going to survive without our 9 to 11 servings of grain. I don't even know how people eat. I mean, that's a lot. And I can't, like, that's a lot. And I came from, and I'm going to talk to you about like my elimination story, because that's kind of what this is, right? It's a little bit of an elimination thing. And even so, I don't think I was eating 11 servings of grains a day, but maybe, right? Because you think of like the average diet, what do you have for breakfast? Like cereal, toast, pancakes, a bagel. I guess that's like what people would commonly eat for breakfast. And then lunch, what do we have? Like sandwiches, soups, pasta salads, things like that. And then dinner, right? You have a side of like rice, or you have a side of pasta, or so maybe you do it. That adds up, I guess. But so what if I told you guys that the base of your diet, the base of this food pyramid is making us sick and unhealthy? Yep. I know for me, and this is a little bit about my, like 5+ years ago, it's probably been 7 years ago at this point in time, I removed grains from my regular diet. My regular diet, right? Catch this, my regular diet. Life got much clearer, literally, like literally the brain fog that I didn't even know that I had. I suffered from debilitating headaches, and I could not for the life of me figure out. I mean, they were bad. I would literally have to come home from work some days and go lay down because my headaches would be so bad. I had gut issues. I had skin issues, just like really dry, irritated, kind of like eczema type thing. I was bloated all the time. And I just like, I was moody, and I just never really could piece it together. So all of that stuff dissipated when I took grains out of my diet for an extended period of time. And then after going down kind of the rabbit hole of metabolism and learning about inflammatory foods, I read enough compelling information to convince me that grains probably weren't doing me any favors. I was checking all the box of like inflammation, right? Gut problems, skin problems, achy joints, things like that. Puffiness, right? When we feel puffy, like maybe our rings just don't fit. Abdominal fats, right? Like that, like abdominal chub that everybody wants to get rid of. Like those are signs of inflammation. Okay. And I was checking all of those. I just never really put 2 and 2 together because I didn't know, because we've been like conditioned to eat grains forever, right? That was a staple in my diet when I was younger. In my childhood, we ate a heavy grain-based diet. So I got rid of the grains, and I never really looked back. I feel like this is why a lot of people are uncomfortable and not fitting in their clothes. Like many of us are walking around with some extra body fat that we want we want to get rid of, and that's okay. We're figuring out that here in the reset. And the other part of that is you're probably bloated, right? You're probably bloated. You're bloated via inflammation. You're bloated from a grain heavy diet that is wreaking havoc on our guts, literally. And when I say gut, you guys, I'm referring to like the gut lining, right? You have your intestines, right? And the lining of your intestines, that's your gut. That's your intestinal wall of your gut. So that's what I'm referring to when you guys hear me say gut. So here's the thing. Every animal on the planet has a biological diet, right? A species appropriate diet. And in the ancestral health space, right? That's the space that I play in. Grains are not a part of the natural diet. It's more of a kind of a modern day construct, to be eating wheat and corn and rice and oats and barley and all that. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I'm not going to go head deep into that right now. What I do want to make clear is, though, I'm not asking you guys to take out grains because it's a carbohydrate. This is interesting because many people that I talk to, clients or prospective clients or just friends or anything like that, they make remarks about like, well, I shouldn't be eating bread, or I know that I shouldn't be having a bagel for breakfast or a donut for breakfast or a sandwich. And the bread, like the bread thing, that's always a thing. Like I know that I shouldn't be eating bread. But when I ask them why, they're like, oh, because it's a carb. This has nothing to do with grains being a carbohydrate, right? Carbohydrates didn't make us fat. Fat didn't make us fat. Protein sure as hell didn't make us fat, right? There's a lot of nuance to this. we are taking out grains because they have these chemical compounds in them. Okay, we're going into a little bit of a science, geeky biochemistry stuff. So stay with me. And if you're not, tell me to backtrack here for a second. I'm asking you guys to eliminate grains at least 7 to 10 days. That's kind of the magic window when we talk about an elimination diet, to see what our baseline is. And then, like, typically you would take them out and then you would add them back in and see how you react. Everybody kind of has an idea of what elimination diet is. So grains have these chemical compounds, they're defense mechanisms called anti-nutrients, okay, that cause irritation to our gut lining. We have to think about it from this perspective. Plants don't necessarily want to be eaten, depending on what plant you are, right? If you're a fruit plant, you want to be eaten. Do you guys know how fruit plants reproduce? Animals come along, they eat the fruit plant, and they go poop everywhere in the seeds, right? And that's how fruit plants repopulate. That's how they reproduce, okay? Plants aren't like that. They don't want to be eaten. Animals, like you and I, right? We're animals in the animal kingdom here, have claws, they have wings, they have teeth, they have camouflage, they have big brains like humans, right? They can run and hide and they can protect themselves, right? Plants can't do that. They're literally dormant in the ground. They're stuck. So their protection that they evolved with so they don't get eaten are these anti-nutrients that cause harm to those who eat them. Okay, you guys tracking with me so far here? Okay. Plants want to survive, right? Every living organism on the planet, like a wheat plant and a human, we're all living organisms. Every living organism on the planet wants to survive and reproduce, right? That's how our species, everybody's species keeps going. And if plants keep getting eaten, they're not going to be able to do that. So they had to find a way to kind of ward off predators, whether it's humans or whether it's animals, in order to stay put. So this is how animals learn what to eat and what not to eat. They eat a plant, they get sick from it, they don't eat it again. Humans, we're dumb. We're dumb. We're not as smart as some of the other animals in the animal kingdom. And we just keep eating the things that are causing irritation to us. Take, for example, a bison, okay? You got a herd of bison. They're like roaming the Great Plains here. And they come across a wheat plant, right? They nibble on the wheat plant. The bison gets a stomach ache. Bison don't eat wheat plant. That's not a part of their biological diet. They eat a lot of other natural and wild grasses, but and wheat is a grass, but not one that they eat. So the bison comes up there, munches on the wheat, it gets a stomach ache, okay? And then it calls back to the rest of the herd and it's like, bison, don't eat this because you're not going to feel good. We need to avoid this plant, okay? Bison are smart, humans not. That's how the wheat plant continued to live on the plains, because it made the bison sick, and that's how the bison figured out what to eat and what not to eat by a little trial and error. So what happens when we eat grains, those little anti-nutrients, I'm going to use gluten as an example, okay? And I'm only using gluten because everybody knows what gluten is. Everybody's heard what gluten is. So if you don't know what gluten is a protein found in the wheat plant, wheat, barley, and rye. It's one of the many anti-nutrients, but I just use it as an example because everybody's usually pretty familiar with gluten. So what happens, we eat grains and those little anti-nutrients, right? Let's use flour or wheat. Flour is a derivative of wheat. We eat that and it irritates the lining of our gut walls. Our little gut walls get inflamed and our immune system is deployed to come put out the fire, right? That makes sense. That's the immune system's job when it detects harm, when it detects a foreign invader in our body, it deploys and it comes out, it puts out the inflammation, and then it heads back to its bunker, right? That makes sense. So the problem here is, since we eat a relatively heavy grain-based diet, that's how chronic inflammation is born and how we get a very overburdened immune system who's constantly having to put out assaults caused by our own diets. But here's the thing. sometimes when I say grains, when I talk about eliminating grains, people only relate grains to gluten. Okay. So gluten, like I said, is found in wheat, barley, and rye. And then we have other grains, right? We have corn, we have rice, we have oats. They don't have gluten in it, right? Those are naturally gluten-free, but they have other anti-nutrients that are similar to gluten in them, okay? So what sometimes people will do is they'll be like, yeah, I removed gluten, but then they start hitting the other gluten-free grains like corn and rice and oats really, really hard, not knowing that there are anti-nutrients in those grains as well. It's just not gluten, but it's very similar to the molecule, the protein molecule found in gluten. So it's still irritating our guts, right? Hypothetically, so in the real world, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, guys, I'm spacing on this. Your digestive tract. Woo, your digestive tract starts in your mouth and ends at your anus. Okay, that it's a one big long tube. Okay, and the walls of that tube are your intestinal lining, your gut. So those anti-nutrients, when we consume them, they start sticking and they start poking little holes all the way down in your digestive tract, and then it causes inflammation, and then our immune system has to keep coming. Our immune system is great when it's acute, right? We want our immune, like, think you stub your toe, you sprain your ankle, your immune system comes, right? It gets swelled, it gets puffy, it gets red. That's your immune system kind of coming to the rescue here. But what is not supposed to happen is we're not supposed to have a chronic immune response, especially from our food. So that's why we're avoiding grains. Okay, that is why we're eliminating grains, at least for a good chunk of time. And then you can run some experiments. You guys keep it out for 7 to 10 days. Go run some experiments. Go eat I don't know, go have some corn tortillas, or go have I don't know, something made with flour. What's made with flour? Pasta? Yeah, that's a good one. And see what happens, right? Because we have to collect some of this data ourselves. And some people are more sensitive to others than other. So some people are more sensitive to certain grains than others. Like for me, because I've run these experiments and I've been doing this for a while, I know that me and wheat, hard no. I get brain fog. I break out. I get really dry skin right up here by my eyes and my eyebrows. My stomach will literally hurt. It's just like a gut rod type feeling. But I can occasionally eat corn, like a good corn tortilla or something like that, and I can be relatively okay, right? So there's some nuance, there's some individuality with this stuff. So that's grains. The other part of that was seed oils, okay? And I'm not going to go too heavy into this, but so seed oils, canola, corn, cottonseed, sunflower, safflower, they're in everything. If you guys took the pantry purge serious, you probably looked at a lot of your foods and you were like, what the hell? Why is there canola oil and soybean and everything? Condiments, right? That's a common one. Restaurants, if you eat out a lot, this is going to be real annoying, but all of your food is drowned in canola oil or soybean oil. Any fried food, obviously they're using those kind of oils with like that. Salad dressings at restaurants, I mean, anything, even just cooking oil. Like if you go and get scrambled eggs from a restaurant, 90% of the time it's going to be scrambled in canola oil. So if you're somebody who eats out a lot, you might, there are ways to kind of get around that. When I go to a restaurant, I just ask my food be cooked in butter. If I go out for like breakfast and I'm getting like scrambled eggs or something, I'm like, can you guys just cook my eggs in butter? Most of the time they're like, yeah, sure. We don't care. If you're going to get like fried food, like there's no way around that. They're not going to be like, yeah, we'll just whip out our tub of bacon fat here and fry your fries individually away from everybody else's. So just something to consider. That's where we find and we consume a lot of these vegetable oils, and not a lot of people know it. They're man-made oils, okay? They're man-made oils. They're completely unknown to the body. Like they're kind of a fake fat, essentially. When you eat them, your body doesn't know what to do with them. Your body can't really metabolize these fats because they're fake, right? They're man-made, so our body doesn't really know what to do with them. If you saw how these oils were made, just Google it. Go onto YouTube and do like, how is canola oil made? Like that might be enough to defer you from even wanting to consume them anyways. But there is a similar immune response from these oils as there are grains. When we consume them, our immune system detects, right? There's a foreign invader. I don't know what this fat like substance molecule weird thing is coming in, but it must be harmful because we don't know what it is. So here goes our immune system again. And our poor little immune fire squad has to be deployed from their little bunkers again after they just got done putting out the assault from your sandwich and your bagel that you ate for breakfast. Now they have to come back to put out the fire caused by these oils. The big thing with these oils, the difference here is that instead of causing gut damage like grains do, although they do, there is some research supporting that they kind of hurt your gut lining too. These oils damage our bodies on a cellular level. Okay, so our cells, right? Inside our cells, this is important, right? Because this has a lot to do with your metabolism. Our metabolism is responsible for converting fuel into energy, right? The food that we eat into energy, that happens in the cells. We have all these little cells, and then inside the cells, we're going back to 8th grade biology here, you have your mitochondria in your cell. And that is where food is like spun and converted into ATP, which is energy, okay? Little nerdy for you there. These seed oils, it is supported by some research that these seed oils damage the mitochondria. They damage your cellular function. They infiltrate our cells and they get embedded inside our cells and yet cause another chronic inflammation response. It destroys the cell membranes, our immune system, our nervous system, our brain, all of these things. Like it's very damaging on a cellular, systematic, inflammatory systematic base. Okay. Bottom line here is we know that chronic systemic inflammation, insulin resistance, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and gut dysfunction are at the root of most chronic health conditions. So if you are here in the reset and you are trying to get a handle on something, like, not that we're curing and treating anything here, I do want to make that clear, but if you're trying to get a handle on some symptoms or be preventative heart disease, cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, pre-diabetes, which is insulin resistance, autoimmune, arthritis, obesity, all of these things, right? These are all metabolic syndromes. Reducing inflammation is probably a really good start. And the easiest way to do that is by our food, grains, seed oils. And here's the thing, our bodies can handle occasional stress for food, right? From food. I do want to make that clear. We go out every once in a while to eat, and there are times that I don't pay any attention to like the oils, the grain, like any of that stuff, right? Like it's okay when this happens occasionally. Our bodies can handle that acute stress. So moving on, what am I at? 40? Oh, 20 minutes? I got this. Here's the second part of unsupportive food. You're like, what? There's another part of this? Yes. So in my mind, there's like two sections of unsupportive food. There's the unsupportive food that causes harm to your body, right? The grains and seed oils via inflammation. We don't want that. And then there are the unsupportive foods that don't support your relationship with food and make you feel bad about yourself, right? I want us to also remove the foods that make you feel bad when you eat them. They're the foods that kind of keep us locked into some of these dieting patterns. They're the foods that we kind of talked about last week that I gently encourage you to get rid of, which I hope everybody did here, that light up our little pleasure centers in our brain and are engineered to encourage us to keep eating, right? They're trigger foods. Those are also unsupportive, right? If we eat something, if you're keeping Doritos, I'm just going to use Doritos as a proxy here, in your house, and every time you go you eat those and you feel bad about yourself and you can't moderate them, you can't control yourself, then all of a sudden you eat the entire bag and you didn't mean to, and then you're like, oh my god, I suck and I'm never going to be able to. That is also unsupportive. That is also an unsupportive food, because we don't want to be jerks to ourselves anymore. And it's just like, that is a self-inflicted wound because we decided to bring those things into our house, right? So let's keep those foods, our trigger foods, whatever those might be. Let's keep those out of our house too. Mine, you guys want to know one of mine? Mixed nuts. And you're going to be like, well, that's like healthy, right? Like mixed nuts was on our human food list. It was, but I think they're delicious. Like you can go to Costco, and this makes no sense anyways, like that you can go to a store and buy a giant bag of unshelled. Do you know how much? Yeah, it's like if this was nature, you guys, has anybody actually seen like a walnut tree before? Like the amount of time and energy it would take you to open that with your hands, eat the nut, you might have like 4 nuts, right? Like that's all you were going to get. It would take so much work and energy to find, to prepare, to open, to crack, to eat those nuts. And now we can go to Costco and we can buy torso-sized bags of nuts that are unshelled, salted, perfect. For me, that's just a no-go. We just don't bring them into our house anymore because
unshelled pistachios.
Yes, that is one you got. I
Don't have to work for those little nuggets anymore.
I know. And how easy is it to just like 4 nuts? And who's gonna count out a serving size of nuts? Like that's dumb. Like nobody's gonna do that. That's not gonna do it. But I'm like 5 handfuls deep, and I'm like, oh shit. So those things just don't come into our house because it's like I don't want to wage a war on myself and make myself feel bad about myself. So there it is, unsupportive foods, the foods that cause harm to your body, and the foods that cause harm to your emotional health, your psychological health, your mental health. Those are both unsupportive foods. So we're going to stop doing those things right now. And then what's left? The supportive food, right? The meat, the fish, the eggs, the poultry, the nuts, the seeds, the fruits, the vegetables, the dairy, if you are tolerant. That little nice, tidy little list. Those are the foods that we're designed to be eating. Those are the foods that we can metabolize, we can derive nutrients from, all of those things. They are non-inflammatory foods unless you eat nuts by the handful like me. Don't do that. So that's it for the unsupported supportive foods, okay? The other part of this that I want to talk about really quick is your second food fundamental, right? Break fast like a king. Each week we're layering a new fundamental. You're going to get this. So last week with eat meals, ditch snacks. I know some people had some question about snacks and like, is snacking inherently bad? If it's like healthy food, right? Like, well, I'm just like snacking on like an apple or a piece of cheese or jerky and things like that. I sent out an email, and you guys can check your email. I put it out to everybody, and I talked a little bit about why snacking is metabolically confusing because I knew I wasn't going to have time tonight to talk about it. So if you are interested in that, check your inbox. But here we are. Fundamental number 2. You guys have probably heard the saying, breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper, right? That's kind of an old school phrase. This is what we're doing. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the prince and pauper meals later on, but for now, I want you guys to focus on that first meal of the day, your first hunger of the day, okay? Your first hunger of the day, break fast, breakfast. All breakfast is the meal that you break your fast with, right? Because everybody's fasting because we all fast when we sleep, unless you're getting up and you're eating spoonfuls of peanut butter in the middle of the night, which you might be, but we can talk about that. I've got solutions for that too. So everybody fasts. I just want to make that known. We fast overnight. So this meal is the meal that we break our fast with.
Oh, yours over there.
There we go. So there are behavioral reasons for why I'm asking you to break fast like a king. And there's some metabolic implications. And I'm probably going to talk about the metabolic implications next week because that ties into the third fundamental. food fundamental, but it has to do with circadian rhythms, right? Circadian meal timing. This is playing into like, when should we be eating? When does it make sense to be eating? But here's the gist of it. This is going to sound kooky too. Your body is synced with the rising and the setting of the sun. Has anybody heard that before? Is this like complete new news, right? Circadian rhythms. They're these little 24-hour internal clocks that are synced with the rising and the setting of the sun. All your body knows is that the sun came up. Okay. It's I'm trying to think of how to word this so it doesn't go too far down this, since we're going to talk a little bit about it tomorrow. But when the sun comes up, it signals to your body that a new day has become, right? A new day has begun, and your body starts to acclimate towards that. A bunch of like hormonal and metabolic processes start because the sun came up. And one of those is one of those hormones is insulin. Okay, insulin is your fueling hormone. I think I talked about this a little bit last night. Insulin is responsible for whether the fuel you eat is stored or if it's burned. Insulin is really important to have moderated when you have body composition goals. Okay, so nonetheless, when the sun comes up, insulin is on standby and it's waiting for fuel to come in so it can put that fuel to work. That makes sense, right? The day starts and your body's like, okay, the sun has come up. I need some fuel to support my day, and insulin is standing there ready to grab that fuel and convert that fuel into usable energy to support your crazy, hectic, busy life. But what do we do culturally? We're like, nah, like I'm really busy. I'm really busybody. I just don't really have time to eat. You're going to have to wait. Or better yet, we grab a lame banana or a granola bar and then we run out the. We're not going to do that anymore, guys. We have to make time for this because we already know what not making time is doing, and we don't really like that anymore. So we can't be too busy for this. So we rush out the door, we don't eat, we grab something little and dinky or whatever. Or a smoothie, even worse. Don't get me started on smoothies. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know my position on smoothies. We're not drinking our food. We're gonna eat this meal. We're gonna eat this meal. So a banana or a granola bar is not what your body was asking for when it woke up in the morning. We need to send a signal of food abundance to your body. We have culturally been sending a message of food scarcity to our bodies for far too long with our dieting, with our restrictive dieting, with women not eating enough. Men too, right? Men do this too with fasting. We're not fasting here, right, guys? This is an eating principle, not a fasting principle. So we need to send a signal of food abundance back to our body. Put on your hunter-gatherer cap here for a moment. We talked about last week. We evolved in food scarcity. We never knew when our next meal was going to be. So our bodies got really good at storing fuel, okay? Our bodies are really good at storing fuel because that's what they're designed to do. It was a survival thing. So what happens is we wake up, our bodies expect some nourishment to kind of set the tone for the day, and we give it breadcrumbs, or we give it nothing, even worse. We either give it breadcrumbs or like a bagel or something super lame, or we give it nothing. We sent a message to your body that the food environment is unstable. Like the food environment is unstable, it's unsafe, it's scarce. And we store fuel then because our body doesn't know when food is going to be coming back again. Because it's like, oh, I don't know what this animal is doing. Like we're expecting food, it's not giving us food. So we better store everything just in case, right? Because that's what our bodies would have done. It would have stored everything in case of a famine, in case of whatever, in case of food scarcity, you weren't able to hunt and find your food. That's what we do to our bodies. And I know a lot of people have goals of fat loss, yet we send this message to our body that it needs to hoard fuel because we are very inconsistent with providing it nourishment. So part of this break fast like a king is sending this very important metabolic signal to your body that nourishment is coming in, because when your body feels safe, like, okay, there's some food abundance here. We don't have to worry about this inconsistent food environment. When your body starts to feel safe, you know what it's going to do? It's going to liberate stored fuel, aka fat loss. That's where we got to get here. So that's part of the break fast like a king. The other part of this is, what time? I got 9 minutes. Ooh, guys, I'm good. I'm on my last page of notes here. I write a lot of notes to try to keep me on track, and 90% of the time I start talking about something that has nothing to do, like the entire first part of this about the self-limiting beliefs, that was most definitely not really even on my notes, but that's just that's how we roll here in the reset. So the other part of the breakfast like a king is the behavior component of this, right? Like that was the metabolic component of it, the circadian part of it. The other part of this, we're retraining your brain to not prefer dessert for breakfast, because that's kind of what America does. We eat dessert. We eat very sweet things for breakfast. If we break fast with a donut and a frappuccino from Starbucks or whatever, guess what we're training our brain to love and to prefer, okay? We want to train our brains to crave and to prefer substantial, nutrient-dense human food, okay? And the way to do this is when our first hunger of the day kicks in, we are going to answer it with a mostly protein meal, okay? Mostly, if not all, protein. We're tapping the brakes on carbohydrates. This is the first time I'm really talking about carbohydrates. To eat carbohydrates in your subsequent meals, okay? We're not like, it's not because carbs are bad or anything like that, but our body is looking for nourishment, and most of our essential nutrient needs comes from animal protein, okay? We're going to talk about protein next week. So we need to retrain our brain to kind of really want, I crave red meat, you guys, but it's because beef, like it's because I trained my brain. Everybody asks, like, can you crave healthy food? Yes. You have to train your brain to do it though. So when I get hungry, I sit down and I slam 2 beef patties for breakfast, and my brain's like, oh yeah, like I feel rewarded by that. We get a little dopamine hit. And then the next time hunger kicks in, my brain remembers that, and it's like, oh, I remember how good that beef felt, or whatever you're like. Maybe you like eggs, maybe you like, eat whatever you want for breakfast. That's the other part of this, right? We don't have to eat eggs. I hear this all the time about, well, I'm just sick of eggs. I'm like, well, don't eat eggs then for breakfast. Like there's a bazillion things you can eat for breakfast. Like eat chicken, eat a tuna salad, eat beef, eat leftovers, dinner leftovers, right? That's a great one too. So think savory, okay? We're tapping the brakes on carbs at this meal. Eat carbs in your subsequent meal. Make your first meal of the day when your first hunger shows up, predominantly protein. Okay, I got to talk about cravings really quick. This might go a few minutes after 6, but this is actually pretty good timing. And I'm kind of winging it on this too, because I've really never done a formal, I've wanted to do a training about cravings and like why we have trainings. I just haven't really like found the time to like sit down and pull up research and like make it into like a delivery for somebody. So this is actually really nice because it helps me practice about talking about. So many people have reported cravings. Like 90% of you are like, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty satiated from my meals. I like this whole like, protein thing. I'm like less hungry, less snacking, and the cravings are a little less intense, but like they're still there, right? The after dinner one is a frequent one for people. Like I just after dinner, when I get done with that meal, I just like want a little something sweet. So what do we know about cravings? Cravings are a psychological, it's in our heads, isn't that? Damn our brains again. Cravings are a psychological response to food, right? It's like a strong desire, a strong urge to eat a certain food, right? Whether that's sugary, salty, crunchy, candy, chips, ice, like whatever your craving is, it's just like a strong urge towards those things. So something that I think is worth deciphering between though is cravings are a want. Right? It is like, I want something. It's not a need, right? Nobody really needs those foods. We want those foods because they're delicious, right? I think everybody could agree on that. And our brains really like those foods. Back to when we talked about last week about being hardwired to eat. certain foods that are high in sugar and high in fat really, really light up those pleasure centers in our brain and encourage us to eat more, right? That's not new news. That's why hyper palatable processed, ultra processed food is just hard to stop eating, because it's this like wonderful combination of sugar and fat and oil and flour, and it's just like so good to our taste buds that we just want to keep eating it. The food, like think ice cream, candy, pizza, right? Like those are foods that are kind of like high in sugar and high in fat, are very energy dense, very calorically dense, and easily stored, right? And what do we know about our bodies? They like to store food in case that no more food is coming in. We remember that part, right? So that's why those foods sound so good to us, okay? So that's part of it. What the literature says is cravings beget cravings, okay? Does that make sense? Cravings encourage cravings. The more that we eat the foods that we crave, the more that we crave the foods that we eat. It's a conditioned response. I wonder, you guys, I need to play around with this a little bit more, because I have a research article up right now in PubMed, but I don't even know how to like share. I'm worried to start sharing a screen because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out of it again. Okay, I gotta play with that more. But I can send out the article. But basically what it's talking about is what we know about cravings is cravings are a conditioned response, okay? It's a feedback loop. Isn't that crazy though? Like, it's actually kind of nice to know that cravings are just a conditioned response that eventually turns into a habitual choice, okay? It's like Pavlov. Is everybody familiar with Pavlov? They had the dog and they trained the dog that every time it heard the bell that it would salivate, okay? That's a very condensed, oversimplified version of that, but I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. This is similar, okay? This is similar about why we crave certain foods. It starts with a trigger, right? Whether it's an external or internal trigger. Maybe your trigger is after dinner, right? After dinner, I just like something a little bit of sweet. Maybe it is an internal cue, like sadness, like a feeling, like stress, overwhelm, sadness, anger, things like that. So that's our trigger. And then when we have that trigger, we go for that food. Like I'll use the example of after dinner because that's my thing. After dinner, I like something sweet. I sit down for dinner, I eat my plate. My brain's like, ooh, like I really want something sweet. That's my trigger. I go, I have the food, right? I nibble on a little piece of chocolate or a little piece of fruit or something like that, because they're both sweet, right? My brain doesn't really know the difference. Nutritionally, they're different, but my brain doesn't know that, okay? My brain just knows that it wanted sweet, it got sweet, I finished that feedback loop. Does that make sense? It's a conditioned response. We have the trigger, we have the craving, and then we have the outcome. We solidified that feedback loop, and what happens again the next night, I sit down for dinner and my brain's like, ping, ping, ping. I remember I really wanted something sweet. It felt good when I had something sweet, or I felt sad, and whatever your trigger is. And then we do this enough and it becomes habitual, right? The conditioned response leads to a habit. Isn't that great? That's all it is, you guys. That is all it is. Now, I wish that there was an easy way. How you stop that is you have to pattern disrupt. You have to stop the feedback loop when you want something sweet or whatever it is. Maybe you like crunchy, salty, maybe like whatever it is. When you want something like that, they find the reduction happens, the reduction of cravings happens when we stop satisfying the craving. That's it. It's kind of crazy to think that it's just a habitual thing and it's kind of in our heads for the most part. I'm sure you guys have heard before, like, oh, you have cravings because your body is deficient in something. Have you guys ever heard that? Like, oh, your body's deficient in magnesium. That's why you're craving chocolate. And it's like, that's bullshit. We have no current literature that, I think that's just our justification to eat chocolate. And it's like, well, then eat chocolate, right? We're all grown as adults. And if you guys want, and I want to know that like this isn't necessarily bad, but in the context of what you guys are telling me, it sounds like a habit that you guys would like to get rid of. So that's why I'm bringing this around. If you're like, I don't know, I like my like chocolate, my little piece of chocolate or whatever after dinner, and I'm like good with that, like that's amazing. Like that's totally fine. But if you feel like your cravings are getting in the way of things that you want to do and your health and things like that, this is how you have to uncondition that response. And here's the other thing from the research article. It says that cravings amount to 11% of weight gain. Does that make sense? So when we succumb, I don't really like that. I don't like that. But when we satisfy our cravings, that accounts for 11% of our fat gain, the fat gain that people typically don't want. So calorically speaking, if we're going to talk about calories here for a second, that's a big, that can be a big chunk for people who are trying to lose weight or keep it off or whatever. That's a big, it's a bigger chunk of your caloric intake, your daily caloric intake. So, yeah, that's it about cravings, guys. That was, yeah, the solution here is to discourage the crave. And here's the other thing. Don't keep the foods in your house. I know. You're like, Brandy, this is the tough love side of me. Like, if you're craving certain things, get them out of your house. Like, that's number one here, like enable your environment, right? So it's like, if you're having a hard time with chocolate or chips or pretzels or whatever it might be, don't have them in your house, because that's a really good way to disrupt the pattern, because you're not going to be able to eat them when you get that trigger, right? A lot of other people's trigger is when their kids go to bed at night and they finally sit down on the couch. We've connected sitting on the couch with snacking, right? That it's like snacking, craving, whatever it is. I know, like Amber's probably has that little emoji up because it's true. Like, it's like our time to like debrief for a moment. We're like, I just want to like snack on something, but it's habitual. And most of the time you're not actually hungry, right? So that's how you guys, that's how we kill a craving. I hear this all the time. Like, I'm addicted to sugar. I have a sweet tooth, things like that. And it's like, well, we have a sweet tooth because we trained ourselves to have a sweet tooth. And I say that with full transparency that I have a sweet tooth. When I grew up, I'll wrap this up in 1 minute here. When I grew up, almost every time after dinner, this is when I have my sweet tooth, after dinner, when dinner's all said and done, we used to have Kemp's. We used to have a giant thing of Kemp's vanilla ice cream with the Nestle Quick. Do you remember the powdered Nestle Quick? This is old school, in the yellow container. And we would have that. Yeah, it was so good. Or the malt mix. So we would have that almost daily after dinner. So like, that's where part of my conditioned response, like after dinner, we would have ice cream. After dinner, we would have ice cream. So now every time after dinner, there's still a little thing in my brain that's like, Brandy, you just want something sweet right now. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. Like, the urge has gone down because I've reconditioned my brain, right, to not do those things. So you guys, I hope that was helpful about cravings. I just want you to know. And I know somebody asked something about like cravings at certain times of the month, certain ladies, like certain times in your cycle and things like that. And I do sometimes think that there is accuracy in that. We might have cravings, right, from a biological standpoint, whether you have kids, whether you don't have kids, whether you want to reproduce or not, your body thinks you're going to reproduce, right? Like that's another story. And there might be a reason why your body calls for certain things, maybe like high sugar, high fatty foods, because they're calorically dense, and your body thinks that you're going to make a baby and you need nutrients, you need fuel to make a baby. Okay. So that could be part of the reason why we crave things at certain parts in the cycle. And here's the thing. Sometimes, like, I'm all about treats. So just like, treat yourself like a grown-up, not a kid in a candy store here. And if like you have your period or you're before or like whatever, and you're like, I just want like some chocolate or something, go buy a chocolate bar, right? This one chocolate bar isn't going to derail anybody here, right? Like, not all is lost on this thing. Like, sometimes I want something during that time, and it's like, I go and like, I'll buy candy, not a candy bar, because candy bar is lame to me, but I'll buy like a good treat. I'll go get some ice cream, a little pints of ice cream, and I'll eat it and I'll be done with this. Like, cool. Like, my body knows best. And if it was asking for, it's not asking for ice cream, let's be honest, but it was it might have been asking for more sugar or more fat or something like that. And it's like, whatever, like just have a treat and move on. Also vanilla ice cream. Yeah. Okay, gotta go. Great. Me too. I gotta go. My dinner's cooking. I appreciate everybody for being on here, and I will see you guys in the group here throughout the next few days. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Brandy.
See ya.